Welcome to Talk About It Tuesday at the CUNY Athletic Conference weekly webinar series presented by the Hospital of Special Surgery. I am super excited today to be joined in an awesome conversation about athletic administrators who got their start or one of their early years in the CUNY Athletic Conference and gone on to awesome, bigger and better things in life and in their careers. And I wanted to give them their due in terms of what they have accomplished, and we're going to do our best to go through their careers and their lives and have a little fun and enjoy this experience. I encourage all of you to post some questions for them because combined we have and I don't want to give their ages out, but we have well over 100 years of intercollegiate athletics experience on the call today. So please, those of you listening in, tuning in, use this to ask some pointed and smart questions to these individuals. We have a wide-ranging panel of Division I, Division II, and Division III NCAA administrators, along with my friend Terry and I, who serve as conference commissioners for quite a long time. So without further ado, I wanted to welcome everybody. We have Gene Marshall from Hampton University. We have Rob Coleman from St. Mary's University in San Antonio, Texas. We have Jason Fein, who's up in the boonies of Maine at Bates College, proud NESCAC member. And we have Terry Small, the commissioner going into his 19th year at our neighboring New Jersey Athletic Conference. Gentlemen, welcome aboard.
Thanks for having us, Zach.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Good to be here.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. I wanted to just, rather than me paint a picture about each of you, it's probably best that I be quiet and let you guys talk. So let's go down the line and try to engage all of you and have you tell us a little bit about yourself and your career and some of your beginnings. So Gene, we're gonna warm you up and thank you for joining us from Virginia and appreciate your time with us today and thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks, Zach. But unfortunately, out of 100 years, I probably got half of them. So
I didn't want to say anything, Gene, but I think
I'm starting year 37. So, but I've been blessed enough to work with not only you, but these three fine gentlemen over the years and take great pride in their successes. Had a nice run at CUNY in two different places. Started off at Pratt Institute over in Brooklyn, New York, as a basketball coach and became an AD and basketball coach. And then had an opportunity to go to the College of Staten Island where I met Mr. Smalls and Mr. Fein and had a great 2 years there. And we did some great things over there, some expansion, some winning, some academic success. And then I went on back to New Jersey to Ramapo College and stayed there for a while. And then I went to West Point, went back to Ramapo, went over to Iona. Then I went to Queens for a little bit because I was thinking about doing some other things and I had some illnesses. And then while I was at Queens and even before I went, the opportunity to come down here, they had reached out to me on about 4 different occasions and I turned them down 3 times. But as my youngest son got old enough to graduate from high school, they didn't have to move him. I was one of the few folks that didn't have to move their family, although I moved. And then I came down to Hampton. In the meantime, I watched Terry Small grow from a sports information director to a high-powered commissioner, making big decisions. I got a chance to watch Rob Coleman go from an assistant AD to athletic director at a couple of different places and be successful. Then I got to watch Jason Fein go from an assistant athletic director to an AD at different places and become one of the leaders in the industry. And all the while, Zach came in as an assistant commissioner and then became the emperor of the CUNYAC. So, I had a chance to watch a lot of good things and I think CUNY under your leadership has far exceeded, I think, any of the expectations that were laid out for you.
Thank you, Gene. Appreciate that kind introduction, and we'll dwell into some of those stops for you and some of the challenges and lessons that you've learned to make you a bigger and better administrator and got you where you are in your 6th year at Hampton University. So we'll circle back to you in a second. I'll go to Rob Coleman at St. Mary's over in San Antonio, Texas, who are going to be hosting first and second round of the NCAA Division I Women's Basketball Championships next week. So, Rob, tell us a little bit about your path to where you are today.
Sure, Zach. Again, thanks for having me, and to Gene and Jason and Terry. Great to see you guys. It's been a while, obviously, with COVID, and looking forward to hopefully seeing everyone again at an NCAA convention. But you know, I would just tell you, you know, my career has all been about mentors for me. I think anyone listening today, it's just huge to find a mentor out there if you're interested in really any career. But for me, I you know, I'll go through this pretty quickly, but I went to graduate school at Springfield College in Massachusetts. And I worked for someone by the name of Ed Stites. And I don't know, folks probably don't know Ed, but Ed put the 3-point line and the shot clock as we know it today in college basketball. He was the head of the Secretarial Rules for FIBA basketball. And he was just a huge influence on my life as I received the graduate assistantship at Springfield and worked under him. And he was influential with me getting my position at Hunter College through a reference with the athletic director at Hunter, Terry Wanzart. And, you know, so I spent 16 years in CUNY, 8 years at Hunter College, where I was the assistant athletic director, became an associate athletic director. I was an assistant basketball coach there during a great run of success under Ray Amelbert. And then became, I think at 32 years old, the athletic director at CCNY. And I was there for 8 years. We had, I feel, some really good successes, winning 8 championships and track and field, finished in 3rd and 2nd place during my tenure there. And then I made a real big career move to a Division III school in California. I moved my family across the country, and Whittier's in the SCIAC athletic conference, and we did just some wonderful things there. I had a great boss, President Sharon Herzberger, who I did 12 years there, and we just transformed that institution, athletically speaking. And then I made another tough choice, because I think in everyone's career, for me personally, I've always felt getting uncomfortable was a good thing. And I wanted to get back to Division II. I played college basketball at St. Leo University in Florida and Division II school, and I wanted to get back to Division II. And this has been a great move, and another big move for my family, because my son was just about to go into high school when I moved him here. But it's been a great move, and probably have one more left in me, quite honestly. Even though I've been doing this 32 years, I'm close to Gene. And so again, it's just, you know, it's been wonderful. I would just tell you, CUNY was just fabulous for my career. You know, being able to have an opportunity to be an athletic director at a young age, and you know, I worked with Zach at Hunter for a period of time, but obviously, again, just working with Gene and Jason and Terry through my career, and you know, who knows? I mean, if CUNY wasn't in my life, would I have been an AD at 32? I learned so much during those 16 years in New York City. I grew up quite a bit, and it really propelled me to be, you know, the athletic director I am today. There's just no question about it. So again, I would just stress, I mean, I had great mentors, and Ed Stites and Larry Shiner at New Jersey City was a tremendous mentor of mine as he helped me get on a host of committees. And so I don't forget those people, because without them, I wouldn't be here where I am today. So that's just a brief overview of me.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate that. One thing you forgot to mention is that you were ahead of Elon Musk in the curve. You moved from California to Texas way before it was an in thing.
Yeah, well, it was a difficult move, well, you know, with my family and all, but you know, for my career, it was important for me to make that jump.
Awesome, thank you, Jason Fein. The newly talk about emperors, Gene. I think we got to talk to Jason about being an emperor of Division III. Now that he's the chair of the management council of NCAA Division III. But he got his humble beginnings at Brooklyn College over with our friend Bruce Filosa. So, Jason, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey to the Ice Dome over up in Lewiston, Maine?
Yeah, well, the emperor of Division III. You know, my dad used to have a saying. My dad was a New York City cab driver, so I was first generation to college, proud CUNY alum. Went to Brooklyn College, and my dad used to have a saying. Whenever I thought something I did was real impressive, he used to say, "That and a Metro card gets you on the subway." So he wouldn't let my head get too big. So if there's a lesson there at the beginning, let's start with that one. But you know, I had my Bates backdrop up, or our gym, before we got on the call. And Zach said, "No, you got to have something with your campus and show everybody what it's like up in Maine." This is just like a couple of weeks ago up on our campus. So yeah, it's a little different in Lewiston, Maine. I should mention I'm now coming to you from Brooklyn, about 2 miles away from Brooklyn College right now, because I'm actually in New York visiting with my family. So, you know, it's nice to be on a panel where I'm not the oldest one. That doesn't happen as much recently. So I'm happy. I'm in year 27.
He's calling us out, Gene. You hear that? Calling us out.
Yeah, I heard him. That's all right. He's going to get here one day.
Oh yeah,
No
it's
doubt.
coming. It's coming quickly. But I should say, Zach, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I have to say that Rob hit it on the head when you talk about mentors, and some of my mentors definitely on this screen. And I would not be in the position I am today, kind of to Rob's point, if I didn't have my time in CUNY. Spent the first 15 years of my career between Brooklyn College and the College of Staten Island. I had a little bit of a unique trip because I went to Brooklyn, and when I started at Brooklyn, we were Division I, as everybody knows that's on this panel. And I started out as an athletic training major and a student athletic trainer. And going into our senior year, you know, we were faced with the idea that the entire athletic program was dropped, just basically what seemed like overnight. So doing my grad work in sports management, also at Brooklyn, part of the goal there was to bring people, to bring recreation and wellness, but also to start to think about how we brought intercollegiate athletics back. And we were able to do that and build a successful Division III program from, as Zach knows, really humble beginnings. We started with 3 club teams. Our first game, which was in 1995, just to show you how people in here tie together, was against Gene Marshall's Pratt Institute team that he was coaching. And that was my first intercollegiate game as a staff member when I was learning to try to shift from athletic training to be an SID. And I'll let Terry talk about my great SID days with him. But, you know, spent 6 great years at Brooklyn, had the opportunity to go follow Gene after he left College of Staten Island and do almost 9 years there, eventually becoming the AD. Wasn't as young as Rob. I think I was 34 at the time, and just had a great experience. And you know, Gene had set a great foundation there. And we had a blast. And I have to say, you know, one thing about CUNY is that it's family. You know, if you work in CUNY, you went to school in CUNY, it's something that you take with you everywhere you go. Every day I rely on the lessons I learned either as a student or as an employee in CUNYAC. And that's why we're all still so close. And to me, the time of my career, and I'm curious to know how the rest of the folks on the panel feel, you know, today, I would say some of probably the most impactful work, when I felt that I was doing my best work for people that appreciated it the most, was my time in CUNY. And so, yes, I've been super lucky, and I'm excited to share some stories about, you know, where I've gone since then. I did almost 9 years at Drew University, and then now at Bates College. But my time in CUNY is precious and dear to me, and that's why these relationships still remain. So I'm excited to talk to everybody a little more about that today.
Awesome, Jay. Thank you very much. You know, we're going to shift over from you athletic directors to a little bit of conversation about what Terry and I have to deal with on a daily basis. We kind of touched upon a few things that he has to deal with as the commissioner and the new chief medical officer of the New Jersey Athletic Conference. But Terry, thank you very much for joining us. walk us through your path where you started as an SID at the College of Staten Island.
Yeah, it's a great tribute to be with this panel. I'm not sure what I'm doing on here. I don't have the resume of anybody on here, but it's a great honor. I've known these gentlemen for many, many years. I've got good stories, many of which I can't repeat in this public forum, but it's just a great opportunity. So my story is a little bit different. I grew up in South Jersey, but I went to a small college at the time called Elon. Not so small anymore, Division I school, actually playing for the CAA title. And tonight, I was thinking we were going to play Northeastern, coach, but it didn't work out that way. So, I was fortunate I got to work in athletics there. And through a series of unbelievable breaks, I've been so blessed. I got the opportunity to intern for the Philadelphia Eagles right out of college. And like a lot of interns, your internship's coming. I had a 2-year internship, and I'm in the middle of my second season. And we play the San Francisco 49ers. We're flying back across country, and I pick up the NCAA News. There's a lot of people don't remember this, but the NCAA News used to be a printed publication. You flip to the back, and you look at the jobs. They have all the job openings in the back. I see a job open for the College of Staten Island. To be completely honest, I knew nothing about Staten Island. I didn't know it was. I couldn't have told you it was where it was on a map. I had no idea it was part of New York City. I didn't know anything about CUNY. I knew one thing about Staten Island. Rich Kotite, our head coach, was from Staten Island. So somehow or another, I get up the courage and I walk up to first class. The coaches all sit in first class, and the staff and the players are all in back and coach. And again, this is after a loss. We lost to the 49ers. And I said, Coach, can I have a minute of your time? He says, yeah, what is it, kid? For whatever reason, we got along pretty well. I think I just kept my mouth shut and did my job. I said, well, there's this job open at the College of Staten Island. And he says, who is the athletic director? I said, a guy named Joe Barisi. Oh, I know Joe. We play ball as kids. Blah, blah, blah. So he said, when we get back to Veterans Stadium, come down to my office. Now it's like 5 a.m, because you fly cross country. And he picks up the blue book of college athletics. I don't know if these gentlemen remember this. Back before everybody had cell phones, it had all the AD's home numbers in this book. So he calls Joe Barisi at 5 o'clock in the morning and says, Joey, I understand you got a job open at the College of Staten Island. There's a kid that's interning for us. I think you should talk to him. He hangs up the phone. He says, kid, you're going to get a call about going to Staten Island. So I was fortunate enough. I got the opportunity to interview. I didn't get the job right away. It took a couple of months. One thing about CUNY is, sometimes the hiring process, we've all been through it. There's some, it's can be convoluted, but I was just very fortunate enough. I got the opportunity, and I spent 8 years at the College of Staten Island. I got to work for Joe Barisi, a guy named Ira Sweet, and then not many times in life, but I actually got to hire my boss, Gene Marshall, which was probably one of the best decisions we ever made at CSI. And what I'm doing right now, I owe to Gene. A lot of the things I've learned, I owe to Gene. So I'm eternally grateful to Coach for that. The first time I met Rob Coleman, Hunter was our big rival, and I'll be honest, I couldn't stand Hunter. I gave them the nickname the Evil Empire. And here's this guy, he looks like Pat Riley, with the hair slicked back, and we're in Manhattan, and Hunter was really good, and they had really good players and men's basketball. And Rob was a big part of that. I mean, Ray Hamilton, I'll tell you, Rob was instrumental in the success that he had. But win or lose, I had a lot of respect for Hunter, and just really developed a friendship. I think I was at Rob's wedding back in the day, and then met Jason at Brooklyn College. Jason came from the SID field like I did, and it's a great story how we first met. But then when I left CSI for John Jay, I told the administration, I said, the person you should hire is Jason Fein. And they actually listened to me. I'm shocked that they listened to somebody that was going out the door. But I spent 1 year at John Jay, and working in the city gave me a new appreciation for Hunter that I really didn't. You think you have a hard job when you're at CSI, and you got fields, and you got good outdoor facilities, and then you go to a place like John Jay, and it really gave me even more respect for the success they had at Hunter. And then I decided to try my hand, like Rob said, I was looking for a new challenge. I decided to try my hand on the private side. I spent 2 years at Stevens Institute of Technology, working for another great guy in Russ Rogers. And then I got the opportunity to move home, in essence, for the NJAC. And I was always intrigued by working for a conference. I watched what you did, and a guy named Ted Hurwitz, who was was your boss, and kind of studied what they did. I was offered a job to work for a conference many years ago. A guy named John Imarino offered me to work for the Northeast Conference. and I didn't take it. And I was always intrigued by, hey, what it would be like to run a conference. So when this opportunity came around, I didn't want to pass it up a second time. And the rest is 19 years later, the rest is kind of history.
Can I jump in there, Zach, for a second? Just remind everybody one piece of the story that Terry left out, which is that he told me years later that if he had known that Staten Island was part of New York City, he never would have taken the job because he didn't like New York City.
My best story, Zach, is, my first day on the job at CSI. So I literally worked for the Eagles on Sunday, and then I started at CSI on Monday. On Sunday, we played the Arizona Cardinals, and we beat them. We flew across the country. The next day, I'm working at CSI, and Joe Barisi he says, "Oh, by the way, we have a women's basketball game tonight. We're playing NYU." I didn't know anything about anything. I said, "Are they any good?" And he says, "Yeah, they're the defending national champions. They had this Harris was her last name, unbelievable player." Yeah, so I said, "Oh, I'll go over and watch the game." So I drive over to NYU, and there's some things in life you never forget. I'll never forget this score: 78-9. We lost to NYU that first night. So picture Sunday, you're working for the Eagles against the Arizona Cardinals. Monday, you go to NYU and lose 78-9. I remember thinking to myself, what in the world did I get myself into? But, it was the start of the 8 great years I wouldn't trade for anything.
Was Jason Fein your coach?
Oh, we're starting that already. Okay. Everyone should know that no matter what gets said here today, we're all still friends. We've all been at each other's weddings, and some of us have been there through others' divorces. So, I'll let you get away with that one, Zach.
Terry, that's a great story though, dude. That's a really good one. I didn't know that about you, but that's awesome.
No, that's really cool. Talk to me a little bit, tell me a little bit about some of those years. You guys touched upon it, but tell me a little bit about what it means. New York City is a different animal from so many different perspectives. And what are some of the things that you take away from your years in New York City that you can't really replicate? And you could touch upon, there's obviously a lot of diversity issues that we're dealing with in intercollegiate athletics across the board. We have, I don't think ever that in CUNY we have a diversity problem. To me, it's like that's been our strength for a long time. But when you go to other parts of the country and you're like, whoa, we have some serious issues here we have to address. Tell me a little bit about some of the things, that it could be that or anything else that you see like, hey, this is something that I've learned in New York City that's really stuck with me. That's been an important lesson for me throughout my career.
Yeah, I think, well, you hit on a few points there. Like I said earlier, I think probably not a day goes by that I don't draw on my experience that I had in CUNY. I think those of us, whether you grew up in New York or whether you were just in New York working or around the city, we work with a lot of folks who have a lot of fancy degrees and titles, and a lot of, it's kind of that book smarts versus street smarts kind of thing. There's a lot of work that's being done now in our world that's super important and needs to be done. But coming from New York and coming from CUNY, I was surprised at how seamless issues of diversity and inclusion were in what we did every day. And how, I haven't worked in CUNY in 13 years, and how that stuff is now being brought out to other areas of America, maybe for the first time in the way that that folks are seeing it there. So we're able to draw on some of, I think, our experiences of it more being the norm, as opposed to something that was precipitated by some, this year of everything that's gone on in the world. So for me, being in Maine, which is, it's really not that far, it's only like a 5-hour ride, but sometimes you feel like you went to another planet. And I'm not sure how that is in other areas with Rob and Gene, but it's definitely different.
I can tell you at 2 places in New York, at Pratt and at CSI, I was the first African-American athletic director. And I don't think and Terry can talk about CSI, but that wasn't an issue. Me getting the job at Pratt. And by the way, Jason, I think I beat out Bruce Veloci for the job at Pratt at the time. We were the finalists. I was the coach then, but I wasn't the AD. I left IBM to go to prep. But the thing that I'm saying is New York was ahead of their time. Back in 92, 93, our president at the time had me serve as his special assistant for equity and diversity. And that was in 92, 93. Went to CUNY in 96 to 98. And Terry can attest to it. I was on a number of diversity committees, not only at CSI, but at CUNY Central. I mean, and this is in 1996. They were looking at diversity. They were looking at gender equity. They were looking at how we could push the needle and how the students, how they could have, be equitable and how they could diversify the CUNY system. So that was going on then. And then, and just as I left to go to Ramapo, I was on the Division III Management Council, which then led me to become chair of the NCA's Minority Opportunities and Interest Committee, and which led to the BCA and some other things. But when you look at New York, they didn't care who I was and what I was, as long as I could produce. And we had a great run at CSI. That was probably the best 2 years in my career. We had so much fun. We worked hard. We gave the CUNY office hell. I mean, we drove Ted and you guys nuts at CSI, and that was by design because we just wanted to have some fun. But the essence of it was, it didn't matter who I was. Could I produce? Could I produce at Pratt? And the greatest compliment that I could receive at both places, the people that replaced me were African American. And not because of anything I did, but it was because they just realized that whoever could do the job, they would hire. I think Harold Martin came after me, and then Joan Payne, and then later Dave Adebanjo replaced me at Pratt. So I think that New York is about results. And I think Rob and Zach and Terry and Jason can say that. So I think a lot of things that we're doing now, we did 20 or 30 years ago in New York.
So the stuff you started in '98 as fun has been a trendsetter ever since. Now every other campus is emulating you, so I'm used to it for 23 years now. Thank you, Gene.
Gene left me a note. He said, make sure you give the CUNY office.
Hey, Zach, and also Terry will know this. At the time before I left, we were positioning CSI to go to Division II. We had meetings with Doc Wetton, but it took them 25 years to do it. But we had positioned them back then, but because they loved Zach, they decided to wait.
I'll tell you, and that's a topic for our webinar another time, because both you and Rob have also had to deal with campus transitions. We're obviously seeing it with Queens campus transitions from one conference to another. But Rob, Terry, talk to me a little bit about some of the things that you've learned in your experiences that you've touched upon from being in New York City.
Well, you know, Zach, for me personally, Terry, is it okay I go?
Go.
Sorry, dude. I didn't mean just jump in there,
No,
but
you're good.
you know, just kind of, I mean, CUNY, I mean it, you know, you look back on it, it's so valuable for me in the interviews I've done at some of my other positions. And you know, I grew up on the Jersey Shore, went to a predominantly white high school. You know, I didn't get diversity. I didn't understand it, you know, and that's what New York did for me. You know, working at Hunter and the diversity of you know, the different countries and different races and going and being the AD at CCNY, and you know, being able to go in these interviews. I mean, when I moved to California, Hunter, it was a huge HSI institution, and it was huge for me to go in an interview and be able to talk about the diversity of 16 years in the CUNY system. I mean, you don't get that anywhere else. You just don't. And you know, it was huge for me, you know, getting this position, being able to understand diversity and equity and the things we're doing on our campus. I mean, we just had our third fireside chat last night of some things we're doing in our program with some police officers from San Antonio and talking to our students and our student athletes. And so, again, there's so many things, but when it comes to inclusion and diversity and equity and all those things, the CUNY system was huge in informing who I am today, quite honestly, because I was, ignorant, quite honestly, coming out of college, coming out of grad school about that. And it's, that part of, my beliefs and everything else to that. It's really, CUNY was just wonderful for that in my career.
Yeah, I'd echo exactly what Rob said. I mean, it's one of the great things about working for Gene was, he treated everybody as family. So, I mean, literally, I got to grow up around his kids and his family, and knew his parents and his wife. And I mean, he literally made it a family affair, to the point it used to drive me crazy. When he was coaching, he would literally invite the whole athletic department to go on these trips and say, Terry, figure out how to pay for it. But it really was a family affair. And you really learned that, that's what athletics are about. And that's what the CUNY is about. And as Rob said, I still keep in touch with people from all walks of life. People that we worked with at CSI, people we competed against, some people that we had the most bitter rivalry with. The game would end and the whistle would blow, and we would just, we would shake hands and be friends off the court and celebrate win or lose. And it just was a great time as a young person. I got so many different experiences that, people today, I say this all the time, that young people that are starting, they just, unfortunately, it's the world's changed a lot. Coach people like Joe Barisi and Gene gave me opportunities that unfortunately I just don't think a lot of people get. And you really learn a lot when you work with people, travel with people, really become family. So I'm eternally grateful for some of the opportunities I got in my early days at CUNY.
Terry,
Go ahead,
I was just going to say, Terry, you hit on an important point, though. You say people don't get those opportunities, but you mentioned taking that risk, going up and talking to Coach Kotite. And I think that's something that, people don't necessarily do, is take that risk, especially when you're young in your career. And, as Michael said, right, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And I think that all of us have experiences in our career where we had to kind of take a risk and maybe venture into a spot where we weren't quite sure we belonged, but took a chance, and then people took a chance on us. And I know that's the way I felt about, my mentors in my career. And I just want to touch on one other thing about CSI and CUNY that I think was special and ahead of its time. Look, 3 of us worked in Staten Island, which we would say is probably not the most diverse place in New York City nor anywhere. But because we worked in CUNY and for the college, we were at the forefront of bringing that not only to our campus, but I think to the community. And that's what Gene talked about. Gene was Terry was too, but Gene as AD was like a hero in Staten Island, and it's in the newspaper all the time. And so I think we were at the forefront, when I was there in, early 2000s, when Harold took over, we created a student athlete of color group before, now we just did that at Bates this year, that's almost 20 years ago. So thinking about the needs of our student athletes and our clientele at that point, I think was super important, to being part of the CUNY mission and pushing things forward.
One of the things, Zach, that Jason brought up, and I think Staten Island, we had a great time, and everybody, and I still every now and then get a chance to go back. It was just a great time that people were open, but more importantly, if you look at what we did at CSI and then what we were able to do even at Ramapo at one point, at CSI, when I took over the program, there hadn't been too many female head coaches. And one of the things I did was hire a female head coach, because that's what those young ladies needed at that time. And I was able to do that in my role as athletic director. So I did the same thing at Ramapo. But the other thing that I really wanted to make, everything is so political now. We used to be able to pick up the phone and make a phone call, and that would either get you an interview or get you the job, because if we made the call, it meant we trusted you. I can remember when Rob went from Hunter to City, it was at that time, I forgot who we had to talk to, but Rob was way more than ready, and he blew him away.
Richie's earned it, my friend. Richie's earned it. Richie's earned it.
Richard, yeah, Zernak, yeah.
Was there. Yeah.
I mean, that was the relationships. I mean, Terry going to his current position. It was a phone call. I went to certain places. It was a phone call. Now it's, you got to know the search firm. You got to pat them on the back. You got to, and it really hurts the opportunity for the young, good people that just need that shot, because now you got to go through a search firm. And I think that hurts.
Speaking of phone calls, can I tell my favorite story about phone calls? So
I know where this is going already.
I'm on the search committee for the AD position. I said,
God.
you're pretty lucky when you get to be part of hiring your new boss, right? So I'm on the search committee, and this guy named Gene Marshall is one of the finalists. I didn't know anything about Gene at the time. But I get, when you're on a committee, oftentimes they'll say, we need you to call references. And his number one reference was Jim Calhoun. Coach, he's very modest, but he, played at Northeastern for Jim Calhoun. He was coaching Northeastern. And now Connecticut's in the Final Four, keep in mind. And I don't even remember who was on chairing the search at CSI, but they said, you really need to call Jim Calhoun. And I said, listen, he's in the Final Four. Can't this wait till next? No, it needs to be done. So I called the office at Connecticut. I think they were in Texas or somewhere. And I get his secretary, and she said, well, what are you calling for? I said, I'm on a search committee, and I got to check a reference for Gene Marshall, and Coach Calhoun is one of his references. She said, hold on, I'll call you back in 15 minutes. 15 minutes later, I get a phone call, and I hear the balls bouncing in the background. It's Coach Calhoun calling from some arena somewhere. I don't even remember where the Final Four was. And I said, Coach, I can't believe you're doing this. He said, for Gene Marshall, I'll drop anything. So, I mean, you talk about an impression as a reference. So I think it speaks to Gene and the love and the care that Coach Calhoun had for him, and how proud he was for him, and would have done anything, including stopping practice at the Final Four to make that call for Gene. So talk about phone calls. That's a big time phone call there.
There you go.
No, absolutely. We guys, throughout the conversations, we referenced a number of different things that you've done. And how valuable has it been for you to serve in many different roles, starting out in coaching, starting out as an athletic trainer, starting out as an SID, understanding different aspects of the operation before you get to your position, as opposed to, some of the other ways to getting ahead. How important is that, wearing multiple hats of Division III, to moving you forward to where you are today?
Well, certainly coaching was just ginormous for me, because, we're evaluating coaches, all the time, and being a coach and understanding the things that a coach goes through. I would just say to anyone out there looking to be in athletic administration, wanting to be an athletic director one day, I think coaching is something you really should do if you can do it. Being around the student athletes. I did it at Springfield College. I was the graduate assistant. I was the head coach for the JV women's basketball team back then, before I got to Hunter, and I did working under Ray Amelberg for, I think, 8 years. And those were just great times. Just the excitement of all, CUNY, the CUNY excitement at those championship games, and what we went through. So I would just point that out. I think if you can coach, just because of what you do with coaches as an athletic director, and understanding what they go through, and I think that'd be an important step for someone out there.
I also think that in being in Division III at that time, limited resources, many tasks that you do more than just you're just the athletic director. There were times at Pratt where I wrote stories, didn't do a good job of it, but until we could hire an SID. So not only do I understand what coaches go through, because I've coached on both sides of the ball like Rob has, men and women, but you do some of the administrative stuff. So you can relate to the positions. Terry and I and Jason and I can talk about the fields at CSI. Okay, I did not have to sod or seed anything, but I knew when it wasn't right because I had been there. I had done that. And I think what's missing nowadays, a lot of people don't have that experience. So when they look at a coach, they evaluate them as a fan, not as a person that sat in their seat.
Mhm.
You know, Rob can talk and he knows when somebody's trying to pull the wool over his eyes or when they're real. Same thing with different positions. Terry now as a commissioner has been around coaches enough, has been around ADs enough. He knows when they're pulling his leg and when they're not. You've been around him, Zach, a lot. Jason has in his role. And I think that's missing because a lot of times people evaluate you based on what their experience is. And if they don't have the experience, then they evaluate you as what I call a fan. One of the good things I have about our president here, Dr. William R. Harvey, who's in his 43rd year at Hampton, when we have conversations, he's former basketball player, understands athletics. So we have conversations about athletics. So when he makes a decision, it's professional based, not emotional based, not a fan based. And I've experienced others that have gone through that. One at Staten Island, we could say that did not like the fact that we were in the paper all the time because we had a beat writer and had to stand next to me in order to get her a picture in the paper. You know, but what they didn't realize, if I lost, like when NYU beat us, my mug was on the front page of the paper, we got beat. So yeah, when it's nice and we win championships, they celebrate us. But when you lose, they question you. So, I mean, those are the things that the president that I have now understands and other presidents. But I think that's the experience makes us better leaders because we sat in those seats. So when we tell our people that work for us, that report to us what they're doing, I've done that job. So I kind of understand it.
You know, Gene, one of the things that in looking over your bio to make sure I don't miss anything, that was, you mentioned President Harvey, was extremely impressive to me is that he wanted you to, or wanted the college to focus on diversifying the college by adding a men's lacrosse team, which you became the first HBCU in the country in Division I to add that sport. You know, that takes vision and forward thinking of what he wants for your campus. Tell me a little bit about that, because that seems to be clearly going against the tide, let's say.
Well, if you go back to 1995, when Hampton University went from Division II, which was a founding member of the CIAA conference. It was founded on this campus. So after all those years, 70 some odd years, they decided to go Division I and go to the MEAC. In the meantime, he started a sailing program. We are still the only HBCU that has a sailing program. 95% of those athletes come from Europe, come from France. Our coach comes from Italy. Our coach comes from Italy. So then you fast forward to lacrosse, and it goes back to the day I was hired. One of the things he wanted me to do was look at leaving the MEAC and finding the right conference to move to, because Hampton University is one of the best mid-sized universities in the country, not just the best mid-sized HBCU. We have a cancer research center, one of the largest standalones of its kind in the country that treats cancer. No other school, whether it's HBCU or not. So he wanted his athletic program to match up to the university. And so we not only moved from the MEAC to the Big South, he looked at a club lacrosse program that was formed by a gentleman from Brooklyn who had passed away. And he said, can we make this a Division I program? I said, yes, because we want to attract other students. We want the best students, not just the best African-American students. We want the best students. We're celebrating this year our 20th anniversary of the Sweet 16 run that we had. The coach was a white male. So diversity is very important. And then after we started the lacrosse, we had women's soccer. And what we were trying to do is get some South American student athletes to come as well. We also recruit track people from Kenya and other places. So, and just recently, we just joined our lacrosse team now has a conference. We're in the Southern Conference. So we take diversity and inclusion very seriously. But the biggest thing is, you know, he had this vision a long time ago, having our sailing program.
That's awesome. Thank you, Gene. I appreciate that perspective. Just for the audience to know, we're going to get to all the questions. So keep them coming. We see them. We'll get to them. Just want to make sure we keep the flow going with some of the conversations. A lot of us in college athletics, more than people will ever know, spend time in revenue generation and fundraising. You know, Gene, you know, from your days at Pratt and Staten Island, I know you were involved in some of those things, but not to the tune of bringing in $12 million over 5 years at Hampton. Rob, you're doing that with a Nike deal and creating your own studio for broadcasting your television, broadcasting your games on TV in the San Antonio area. Tell us a little bit about, from each of your perspectives. I know we're at the Division 1, 2, and 3 in the conference level, but talk to us a little bit about some of the realities and how much time you actually spend on revenue generation to ensure that your program operates at a high level.
I did that quite a bit, Zach. I mean, I think we put a lot of time in that when I was at Whittier and obviously here at St. Mary's. I think, you know, what CUNY brought were all those things I talked earlier, what it brought to me. But when I went to Whittier, it really was another part that defined me as an athletic director, because we raised over $16 million and transforming our facilities. We had a time there when the economy kind of went down in 08, 09, and we were building out a new pool. And we fundraised $9 million for that project. And the Board of Trustees made a really courageous move to do that project, even though the economy got hit. And you know, it would have cost, you know, $22 million if we didn't do it then, quite honestly. They made a really tough and courageous call there. And we went on to, you know, be the #1 team in the country in men's and women's water polo. I took a trip to Brazil. We started a water polo club with Brazilian students at Whittier. International. The program is completely international. And, you know, that fundraising, you know, obviously helped me get the position I'm at here today. And so I don't know if, you know, I'd say, you know, 40% of it is about that. It's certainly about the numbers, the budget, the corporate sponsorships, the fundraising piece, the working with our booster club. You know, all of those things go into it, because look, at the end of the day, ticket revenue generation, you know, the bottom line is you know, for us, it's scholarships and you know, if you want to compete with one of the, you know, toughest Division II conferences in the country, if you want to compete in it and then playing regionals and nationals, you know, money helps, because facilities sell to our student athletes. There's no question about it.
I think we, you know, look at it from a couple different angles. Those of us that worked in CUNY, certainly revenue generation, we spent a lot of time, you know, marketing our facilities and renting them out. And we all have some great stories about, you know, CYO cheerleading events and you name it. And that was a little more probably of what our revenue generation was like when we were in CUNY. As we branched out, you know, being at Drew, it was probably 25% of my time. We had not had a real fundraising arm of the department or the institution for athletics when I got there. So we started the Blue and Green Club, which ended up bringing in over $8 million in the time I was there. which was terrific. We did that with our advancement folks. And honestly, I think that the vision of your president and your administration is really huge there, and how they see that as part of your duties. It's a little bit different, I'd say, in the NESCAC. And I don't spend as much time as I did at Drew doing fundraising, partly because, you know, we have some better budgets, but partly because we were already well into a capital campaign for $300 million when I got there. And we're on the back end of that now. But it's, you know, it's a big part of what you need to do, especially now in our field. And I think it's, you know, it's a little different at each level, whether it's 3, 2, or 1. But, you know, it goes back to kind of what you were saying a little bit before of just kind of having that well-rounded set of experiences in Division III, you know, and we'll talk a little bit more about, you know, I remember doing laundry with Terry Small and College Staten Island, but, you know, there's all kinds of things, putting the tarp on it off the field. So you have to kind of switch hats, you know, much more swiftly in D3.
I think each place that I've been, I've learned, and the fundraising and friend raising is relative, because it's all about relationships. At Pratt, I was able to raise, you know, a couple of $1 million, which was huge back then. You know, we had renovations and new equipment. At Staten Island, our relationships were huge. And Terry knows this. Wagner to this day complains that we beat him because we charged him about $250,000 to play their games and practice at our facility for their men's and women's program, while their facility was being renovated. Plus we had rentals. Plus we had other folks with Irish Sweet there that we could leverage relationships. Then you go to a place like Hampton, where we were one of the few schools at our level, and let alone HBCU, that had a head-to-toe Under Armour deal that really helped us. We also were able to raise a lot of funds through different avenues, whether it was grants. How many athletic departments write grants? We were able to get positions through the NCAA grants. We were able to raise additional funds through guarantee games. But more importantly, we did some stuff during our homecoming. I caught a lot of grief for it, but we charged people to congregate in the parking lot, which they had never done before. We went from $24,000 my first year, $36,000 my second year, $90,000, $120,000 to $150,000. And the year before the pandemic, we had 15,000 people at homecoming, which was the largest gathering in many, many years. Alumni were given dollars. We have a Hampton Nation, which helps us raise money. We have a Booster Club, which is a more mature demographic that we raise money. And it's still a work in progress. But at the end of the day, like we did in Staten Island, we leveraged relationships, political relationships. Matter of fact, at that time, the borough president, Molinari, played racquetball every Friday at 3 o'clock. And that allowed us to have access down the road to a new baseball stadium, to renovations to some of the current facilities. And if you look at what Staten Island, the athletic department, has become, a lot of that is about leveraging the political relationships. It's not all about somebody coming in and writing a check, but it's about leveraging those political relationships so that when bonds are passed and bills are passed, they're right at the table. So, you know, I think everything's relative. I have a great president who is a fundraising genius, and we work together, and we've been able to do a lot. We still have a lot more to do. Matter of fact, I was late for this call because we're working on an extension for our football stadium, for our football program, which will later spin off to basketball and some other sports. And we're also getting a turf field done for our softball program. So, I mean, these are all things that, you know, we're trying to get done, and fundraising is a big part of it.
All right. So thank you, Gene. Terry, did you have anything to add on that?
No, I think Gene said it well, especially when we were at CSI. It was Gene was a master of leveraging those relationships and really fostering, the great thing about CUNY is the community is invested. I mean, everybody has some kind of tie to CUNY in New York, right? Either they went to school there, has a spouse or relative, or somebody that works there. So it's personal to people in New York, and that's the great thing about CUNY and the CUNY Athletic Conference. To this day, I can go somewhere and find somebody that has some kind of connection to CUNY.
Excellent. All right, so we'll go to some of the questions that we received on the chat. We'll start out, and I see Rob would like to answer this one. You all made the decision to leave CUNY at some point. What were some of the reasons behind it? What was it really? Was there one thing that really kind of set you to move, or was it, what was it about your move away from CUNY? Rob, you want to start us off?
I mean, yeah, I would just say, Zach, it was just the opportunity. Again, we go back to people, the reason I moved, I never thought I'd go to the other side of the Mississippi River, quite honestly. And I think and everyone goes through this, or a lot of people do. I just felt like my 16 years in CUNY, I had accomplished a lot at City College in a short period of time. And I knew that this was the next step for me. And so I was up for the athletic director job at Babson College at the same time I was up for Whittier. And I had some friends I went to graduate school with at Springfield who were graduates of Whittier College. And, small world, but I actually had turned the job down. And the president and I know Gene's gone through this, but the president kept coming back and asking me, why? And I laid some things out, and she answered all the questions. And, I walked back in, my wife said, how'd she take it? And I said, pretty good, because we're moving to California. Mm-hmm. And so, she answered all the questions. And again, I think it's a gut thing. Like, I just felt accomplished. I felt, hey man, we did some great things. We had a great staff together at Hunter. We did some wonderful things. It was tough leaving there to go to City College, but, become an associate AD to an AD, it was the right time to do it. It was uncomfortable to do that, even though I think I was prepared to do it. And it was uncomfortable to move my family to California, move away from everything I knew. But I think you got to take those risks. I think that word was used earlier. And like I said, I did it again coming here. And so it's just when there are opportunities there, you got to go with your gut that it's going to work out. And if it doesn't, I could always move back home. That was never an issue, but just being the go-getter that I feel I am and what makes me tick, those things were really important in my life, and kind of blessed that it's all worked out to this point.
Because New York City area, the greater New York City area serves as a backbone to each and every one of you. So, is that change difficult? I mean, you have to be willing to make that jump and that change.
Difficult, but at the same point, growing there first was huge. Yeah, because it really did allow us. I mean, I've always wanted to go near a city. I mean, I moved to California near LA. I'm in San Antonio, another pretty big city. But, if I did it opposite, I mean, CUNY really helped me blossom going to everywhere else I went to, being in the New York region. And so really happy that, that's the way my career kind of went.
It's definitely difficult. Terry tells a story all the time. You talk about going to the other side of the Mississippi River. I never thought I'd go to the other side of the Hudson River.
Yeah.
Right? So, and being Brooklyn born and raised, when I had the opportunity to go get the job at Drew, it's very similar to what Rob said. We had just accomplished a lot after 9 years at the same spot and 15 years in CUNY, and it was time to kind of maybe expand that portfolio a little bit to a different type of institution in a different place. But even that was, while Drew was a smaller private liberal arts school, it still was only 45 minutes away from the city, still kept a lot of the relationships. Moving to Maine, I think Terry almost fell off his chair when I told him that one. But, you talk about wanting to be near a city. I'm a city, person as well. And I go up there for the visit, and I'm talking to the search firm person, and I'm talking to the chief of staff, and Lewiston in Maine, it's the second largest city in Maine. And I, well, okay, Portland, Portland, all right. Then you get up there And it's like being the second largest city in Maine is like being the second tallest pony in the circus, right? You're still pretty small, you know. But you know, you go for the experiences and the opportunities, and then you realize, like Rob said, that you can always be home. You can always have those relationships, and luckily through our field, you know, we get to see each other prior to COVID times, and hopefully, you know, knock wood, soon again, whether it be at an NCAA convention or a Final Four or some event that we're, you know, all doing. So, you know, but I think being willing to branch out, and for some folks, you know, depending on the timing, it works or it doesn't. You know, you always feel though with CUNY and New York, it's like you have a place to come home to, and that's at least the way I feel.
Hey, Zach, I just want to just say something else real quickly. I mean, lots of other things go into it because we all have very diverse careers, right? Like I've been at big schools like in CUNY, 10,000 or more students, to smaller schools, public, private, schools with football. That was important that I went to a school with football for my career. And there's lots of things that go into it, but sitting in an interview and talking about, you know, the diversity I've gone through, big schools, smaller schools, private, public. I mean, all that's really, really helpful. You know, helping move, and those went into my thought process too, as, you know, what's the next thing I kind of need. And so, you know, football was really important at that point, having that in 22 sports and overseeing all that. And so, you know, those were other decisions that went into the process.
Jay, you had that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think challenges. I've always been a challenged person. The reason I left Pratt to go to Staten Island, because it was a challenge. New facilities, changeover in staff. They were moving in a different direction. We had such a good staff at CSI and the CUNYAC that those 2 years were very easy. We worked hard, but we put a good infrastructure in place. So I looked for another challenge. And at that point, I didn't want to move my family out of the area, but I could move back to New Jersey and save on bridge tolls. But it was just a matter of looking at philosophy. We had done what I thought we could do there. I also met with the president of Ramapo and the vice president at Ramapo, and their views were aligned with my views. So I was either going to go there or somewhere else, local. And they stayed on me. They must have, I turned the job down 3 times, and Terry can tell you, every time I come back in my office, I'm not going. And believe it or not, CUNY at the last hour up to ante, and they, you know, they're strict with, you know, you got this step and this step, but at the 9th hour, they came up strong. But at the end of the day, and I remember talking to my dad, who's just passed recently, and he said, this is a challenge. He said, because if you don't succeed at home, this is your county, this is your town, you're gonna, you know, it's gonna be bad. And I said, yep, and I was up for the challenge. So I took that job, and I took it as far as I could go, and then I went to West Point. And then I went there, and then I went back for another challenge. I'm a challenge-driven person. I came here with a challenge. And I think that when you do that, it's not about what the other place didn't do. It's about what you were able to accomplish at that particular time and what's next. You know, how many more boats do you have, you know, left to fire? And I think CUNY has always been a place that you could go back to. The relationships always develop, and they stay. They don't go away. And, you know, you celebrate. It's almost like I went to Northeastern. So I'm an alumnus of Northeastern. Well, I'm an alumnus of CUNY. And so I watch what goes on. I watch my former players that were there and former people that work with. So that relationship never goes away.
We can't afford you right now, but be ready for the next challenge. We're going to pull upon you. So don't be ready, okay?
Well, you know, first of all, and I think one thing that we all are thankful for is that Zach is a constant for us in CUNY, and that's always nice to have that shining beacon, holding the torch. But what Gene didn't tell you all is that it was actually it came down to the fried calamari. That's why I kept staying with Staten Island, because no place would up the calamari.
That's true.
Anything, right?
That's true.
But I will say, and Gene is humble, but all of us here owe a lot of what we've been able to accomplish to Gene. And Gene mentioned earlier about recommending folks for jobs, and saying that Rob was ready or whoever was ready. And I remember doubting myself on whether I was ready for a position that was outside of the world of CUNY. That was really all I knew. And I remember Gene saying to me, "You're ready for it." That's his line. "You're ready for it, and go get it." So publicly here, first of all, I think for all of us, thank you to Gene for that, for pushing us out of our comfort zones, and then saying those experiences, we're all challenge-driven people here, that look for that next challenge and go, that's the next step for us.
Exactly. One
Yes.
quick thing about Rob's former boss, Ray. When Ray took over at New York City Tech, and I forgot where I was, but we developed a relationship when he was there, and we would talk about the challenges that he had. And I had been out of CUNY a couple of years. I don't know where I was at the time. Could have been at Pratt. It could have been at Ramapo or at West Point. But we would talk all the time. He was not only a great coach, but a good leader and a good person. And Terry, who was at Hunter, still there, was a great person and we worked from the time that she was an assistant AD, and all the way up to being an AD. And when we look for coaches, if I look for certain coaches, I would call her. If she looked on the basketball side or whatever, she called me. Same thing with Sue Larkin, who was at Baruch, or John Jay, and Bill Lang at Baruch. So those relationships always lasted, whether I stayed in CUNY or these gentlemen stayed in CUNY or not, because there were always constants. And I think those relationships they lasted a lifetime.
No, that's awesome. Thank you. Malik Martin has a question. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about working in college athletics? Anyone?
That we just watch games all day, and that for the last year we've been doing nothing. I think what people sometimes don't realize, you talk about challenges, is that the people that I find that I gravitate towards in this business and when we're doing hiring is problem solvers. We are not curing cancer. We are not sending people to space. We are doing great work that I think is appreciated by, when you keep the student athletes at the forefront of what you're doing and what is best for them, this job becomes easy, right? We tend to overcomplicate it. It's problem solving. So you look at this year with COVID, and at our place, for example, we had to turn our ice arena into the COVID testing center, and our auxiliary gym into an auxiliary dining space, because we had to space out the folks that usually all eat in the same place on top of each other. So our coaches were able to keep their jobs and be kept whole by working in the testing center and working as contact tracers and doing it. And when we were setting up the ice arena for COVID testing, it reminded me of setting up for an NCAA championship, Zach. Just exactly the same thing we used to do for an NCAA. Where's the pipe and drape going? What's the ingress? What's the egress? What's happening? So it's problem solving, and there's always something to do. There's no boring day. It doesn't matter if sports is happening or if it's shut down around the world. There's nothing boring about this job.
Excellent. Thank you, Jay. Terry, question for you. It kind of ties into both of us, but in working in a athletic department and working at the conference office, what are some of the major differences, and what are you looking to achieve to better your conference as opposed to when you were at a school and trying to better that school program?
It's a great question. It's something I struggled with early. I mean, when you first, and I don't know how you feel, Zach, you can chime in too, but I mean, when I first started, you know, when you work for an institution, you're always striving to win a conference championship, or, you know, maybe if you have the opportunity maybe to win a regional championship or a national championship, you're obviously looking to graduate your students. You're looking to make sure you're putting them on the right course academically. So you're very goal driven. You know, some goals are more realistic than others, but, you know, when you work for a conference, it's very different. And I struggle with that at the beginning. You know, what is my purpose here? But after a couple of years, you figure out that it's, I like to compare it to a train conductor. You're just trying to keep the train on the tracks and keep it moving smoothly. You know, you're dealing with so many different personalities, so many different egos. I kind of laugh, you know, my wife works for a nonprofit, and she got a new boss, and we went to dinner one night, and he had just gotten the job as a CEO. And I never forget, he said, you know, I think your job's a lot like mine. And I said, well, what makes you think that? And he said, well, you know, I report to a board like you. And I said, well, imagine if you reported to a board and they're all trying to beat each other, right? You know, when you work for a nonprofit, everybody's kind of pulling in the same direction. You know, unique thing about working for a conference is, you know, you're working with a bunch of people that are all literally trying to beat each other, and you have to somehow try to figure out a way to get them kind of working together, pulling in the same direction for the most part. So it's just a little bit different, but I look at it as a challenge, and one I'm really blessed to have.
No, I agree with you. For me, it's a challenge on, you know, I look at it as I don't work for any one institution. I work for the betterment of all the student athletes. So all the student athletes across all of our schools is who I work for in terms of trying to make their experience better. So everything that we do, if we focus on that and trying to make their experience better, whether it's be, you know, try to get them an internship, or whether it be we get additional sponsorships to help us to do better, to help them be visible on the national platform, to get some extra benefits that in terms of their experience, it's priceless. You know, it's, and then on top of it, I don't have to root for anybody to win or lose, because I'm always smiling because someone's winning. You know, that's who I'm giving the trophy to. So therefore, I see the joy of reaching that pinnacle and winning the conference championship, going to the NCAA tournament, as opposed to if I'm at a campus, I'm worried about half of my schools didn't make the playoff, half of my teams didn't make the playoffs, another third make it lost in the first or second round, and one or two losing in the finals. It's like a downer. For me, it's always a win-win-win approach in terms of serving the student athletes and also seeing and celebrating those that constantly win. So I like that global approach and global thinking. So I always enjoy that. Gene, Rob, and Jason, how can you be fair to all your sports considering the overlapping of seasons, the emphasis on some of the revenue sports, especially for you guys in Division 1 and 2, where, you know, football and basketball are going to be the revenue generators, and everyone else is, you know, getting support, audience support, and otherwise, and others are not. How are you balancing the fact that you want to be fair and good as a leader to all of your sports?
I think it goes beyond what division you're in. I think you have to look at what are your major fan drivers. Your major fan drivers are football, men's and women's basketball, track and field. And then in some areas, could be baseball, softball, could be lacrosse, could be hockey. So you need to look at what are your fan drivers, which generates revenue. Because depending on your program, everybody eats from the same table, but there are some people that bring the food that you can eat, and some people just eat the food. And so you have to be respectful to everybody. You want to treat everybody fairly, but it's not fair. And what we try to do here, the sports that generate the most funds are football and men's and women's basketball. They set the table that everybody can eat off of. That does not mean that I don't work hard to provide each and every program with more than what they need and try to take care of our students. So I think that we have to be realistic And we have to look at each individual program and see what their optimum is. And don't compare apples to oranges and oranges to peaches and peaches to bananas, because you can't do that honestly. And I know a lot of times students do that, parents do that, faculty do that, but it's just not fair. And I think that you have to look at the sports for where they stand and try to work with them. And at different institutions, the sports are different. It depends on where you are. So I think that's how I would look at it. But but make the students understand that you all are important. And some cost money, some generate money. And then we have to kind of work that out.
Excellent.
One of the really fun things about working in college athletics is that it doesn't matter kind of when you're in the group of ADs in our world. Zach, Rob, we've talked with Gene, we've talked with folks. It doesn't matter if you're D1, 2, or 3. I remember having a conversation at a conference with Bubba Cunningham at North Carolina, and their chancellor was a former chancellor at Drew, so that was the connection that we had. And we talked about this exact question, and he said basically the same thing that Gene said, which is, look, when you're at an institution where 1 or maybe 1.5 or 2 of the sports are paying for all the other 26, you have to make those kinds of decisions to try to treat everyone with in a fair way. And equitable does not necessarily mean equal. It's a little different on the Division III level because we don't really generate revenue with our sports, but we do have the same, everybody who's a fan, who's a parent, who watches SportsCenter or reads, anything on ESPN, thinks that because you go to Bates, it's the same exact thing as if you go to North Carolina, right? So their students should be treated the same way as, and we try to do that as best we can. But I think that, treating our teams equitably does not always mean treating them equally. And I think that that's why we're in the positions that we're in, is to try to give them the best possible experience that they can within the resources that we have. But also, having to understand that there are different nuances to each one. And that it's magnified more on the revenue generation side than it is on the Division III side, but it still exists for us as well.
Rob, anything for you to add?
No, I mean, those guys, Gene and Jason hit on it. I would, again, I think we all try to be equitable across the board. I went from a program with 22 sports at Whittier, and obviously in CUNY I had, at City College, I think we had like 16 sports, and here I only have 12, but basketball drives it here. We don't have football. It's a big driver for us. We have an arena that seats 3,800, and we get good attendance. Not having a lot of pro sports here in San Antonio, only the Spurs. We don't have pro hockey or pro baseball or all those things. But across the board, like I said, I think Jay hit it on the head. That the goal for all of us is to make sure our student athletes have an incredible experience, that they leave here feeling great about their academics, about their athletics. At some point, maybe they want to give back to the institution. And that's the goal. There's just no doubt. And I think through my career, I've always, tried to be, spread the wealth as much as possible. It hasn't always just been football. When success at Whittier with water polo and some other sports, and here, not just basketball, but soccer and baseball, softball won national championships here. So it's tough. But I think, you have to really you have to communicate with your staff. You got to be very open and transparent with your staff. And I think, I think our staff does understand we're all in this together. And I think that's really important from day one, that everyone understands that.
Zach, I think back to the old Red Auerbach line about when he'd be killing the Celtics in practice, and there'd be Bill Russell sitting up in the stands reading the paper. And he said, listen, I treat everybody fairly. I don't treat everybody equally. And I think it's kind of the same thing here. A football budget is not going to be the same as a tennis budget. It just isn't. And, and it shouldn't be. Those programs operate in different ways. And I think we all struggle with that. But at the end of the day, we're trying to do what's fair for the student athletes.
12 sports, Coleman, that we call that fall up here in the NESCAC.
You know what? You're absolutely right. But I'll tell you, I don't have a boring second here, man.
I know you don't. I know you don't. Absolutely.
Hey, Zach, I just want to say, I do have to go to a meeting here, unfortunately, here at 12:30. So I just in case I hop off, I just want to thank everybody once again. It's great talking with Gene and Jason and Terry and you, Zach, and we go way back. I mean, Zach, I was the assistant AD when Zach was the SID at Hunter, and he was a marvelous soccer player at Hunter. And you know, those were just incredible times. I do want to tell you, from my 23 to 30 years old, they were, I look at those years very, very fondly, and kind of molded me to who I am today. So just want to say that before I hop off.
Hey, you know, Rob, it's we've all learned a lot from each other, and it's funny. It seems like now we sound like, oh, back I remember when we were 23 to 30. It seems like a long time ago. It seems like yesterday. You know,
Yeah.
like we were, and we were making it up as we went along sometimes, which was
No doubt. But I tell you, man, every time I do think of those years, it always puts a smile on my face, always. And I have to think back. Sometimes I lose contact with people, and it disappoints me because, I just get so busy, and there's no excuse to it. But, every time I think about those years, man, it just puts a smile on my face. They were great, great times. And I'm appreciative of those years, because like I said, it's really molded me to who I am today. So Zach, thanks again. Gene, Jay.
Good to see you.
Barry, man.
Thank you. Thanks, Rob.
All right.
Great
Be
to see you,
good.
sir.
I
And
do
thanks
have
to
one
Kim
more
too.
question.
I know Kim's behind the scenes, but
That's right.
thanks to Kim as well, man. Be good, fellas.
All right. Thanks, Rob.
All right. Bye-bye.
Zach said he's got one more question for us.
I did have one more question before I let you guys go, and maybe you guys have some closing comments thereafter. But I wanted to ask you, you guys all talk about some of the mentorships that you've had, but you also talk about some of the other experiences that you guys have had outside of your day job. Gene talked about the community involvement in Hampton and, some of the mentorship programs. Terry, you talked about your involvement with the Eagles and working and continue to work and helping out when you can, because you enjoy that. Jason, you were involved all over the place, particularly with the NCAA and various championships. Tell us, Gene, you definitely talked about, friendships and people that you meet along those ways. So talk about some of those outside experiences that have helped you guys in other ancillary ways, at the very least, meeting some quality people and networking.
Well, one of the things that we're doing right now is that the Division I Black ADs have a Black AD Alliance, which we are trying to work on, trying to promote young African-American administrators, male and female, to get them into top spots. Also, I work with the College Insider. We're trying to get assistant coaches and former head coaches head coaching jobs that are African-American. The biggest thing is meeting with former colleagues, former athletes and people, and trying to set them on a great path for their next position. And so that's ongoing. That takes up a lot of our time, day and night, always helping people. So I think whether it's student athletes, current, former, we have a student athlete program here. We have where we have corporations that come in and talk to our student athletes in their junior, senior year to get them ready for work, give them internships. We have conversations with collaboration with the development office and with the career services office. We're working on something with Madison Square Garden now. So we're always trying to help. I think my greatest joy is former players that I interact with that are doing good things, former colleagues that I work with that are doing good things, and we just keep passing that down. So we're always trying to help. There's never one program. I know there were a couple of questions about how they can get help. All they have to do is give us a call. We'll help them.
That's awesome.
I think all of us in this business, like you hear about servant leadership. giving back is super important. I think in working with our professional organizations is really important to me, especially those that, you know, gave a lot to me. You know, I love my work with the NCAA, but I really appreciate my work with the committees of the Division III athletic administrators. I've been very lucky that, you know, I've gotten to work the last 20 years or so with MOA, the Minority Opportunity Athletic Administrators, and working to help, you know, we talked about diversity and diversifying things in our field the last, you know, over this past year and few years, but really that organization's been working to expand opportunities for the last 20 years. And what we've done, you know, in my time in the NESCAC, it's been interesting. Zach, we've talked about this, is, you know, when we've had things such as assistant coaching jobs and things open, you know, you hear Gene mentioned earlier how you can make a phone call and help someone, you know, get a position. There's a flip side to that too, in certain areas where that's the only way that they're finding their folks to be their assistants and things like that. So in a place like New England, in the NESCAC, it's very, you know, insulated, kind of like in a bubble. You know, hey, can we partner with the CUNYAC? Can we partner with the USA South? Can we partner with other conferences so that we can diversify our pools of candidates that are looking to have different and diverse experiences? So that's something that I've been working with that I really love. Also, of course, I keep my hand in the media relations side, and I've been lucky to work, you know, the Final Fours and the college football playoffs, and going back to the days with the Yankees, and Zach and Terry were in a few of those adventures with us. That's some stories for another day. Terry, I apologize about 2009, buddy. I know it was rough for the Phillies, but sorry, not sorry. But you know, great opportunities, and just, you know, using New York City as the backdrop, and having our CUNY experience has been great, because we've been able to have these kind of like Forrest Gump-like experiences where I kind of look up and go, can't believe I'm here. Can't believe I get to do this. And that all came from my time at CUNY.
Thank you.
My advice is get involved. And this is another area where Gene was thinking 3 steps ahead of a lot of people. You know, when I was working for Gene, he encouraged me to go. There was a vacancy on the NCAA Division III baseball committee. He says, hey, I think you should apply for that. So what the heck do I know about being on the baseball committee? And you know what? I was fortunate enough to get an opportunity, and I'll be honest, if I don't get that opportunity, I probably never meet Holly Garrett. I probably never meet Art Eason. I probably never meet Larry Shiner, a lot of the people that were instrumental in me getting the opportunity to work for the NJAC. So this is where Gene had that foresight. Even I wasn't thinking myself, and I'm just one of probably hundreds of people that he's done that for. Jason's doing that now with his staff. I mean, trying to look for opportunities to put them in position, because you never know one conversation or one contact what it could lead to down the line. That's a perfect example. One service on a baseball committee you think will really never amount to anything, really 10 years later was instrumental in me getting the opportunity that I have right now. So I'm eternally grateful for Coach and thinking 3 steps ahead.
Zach, I got to tell you one story about Terry Small, how great of a guy he is. Part of my Black Coaches Association board and the Minority Opportunities Interest Committee, I had to go to the All-Star Weekend and speak with Richard Lapchek, Bill Russell, and some other people in the morning. We were playing Rowan at 2 o'clock. So I flew out of Newark, had somebody take me to Newark, left my car at Ramapo. Terry picked me up at the airport at like 12 o'clock. I got there just in time. And this is, the NCAA had good money then, because they had a limo waiting for me after I gave my speech. Terry picked me up in Philly, took me to the game at Rowan. Our ladies didn't play well. The refs were horrible. And I got thrown out at the end because I didn't curse. It's one of probably 2 times in my 19 years as a head coach. I just told them that I was going to make them stay there because they screwed this game up, and I kept calling timeout, which was in my right. They threw me out. But on Monday, because I was in my rights and I didn't say anything, Terry overturned it. So it wasn't, we lost, we were gonna lose the game, but I wanted the officials to suffer. And so I'm laughing as I'm going back on the bus, and I'm talking to my vice president. She said, well, what happened that day? And I said, I got tossed. For what? I said, because I kept calling timeout. Now, most experienced officials would have just swallowed the whistle and not paid attention to me. And because I didn't curse, I didn't say anything. So it was funny, but that's just the kind of guy he is. He saw, now if I was wrong, he would say, Coach, you were wrong. You know, you got to serve it. But he went back, and that's just to, you know, to pick me up at the airport and take me to the game, and then be, you know, have the presence of mind to make a decision that was, you know, fair.
You know, that I just think that there was a calamari dinner involved somewhere along the line of Staten Island after that. But I'll leave it for another day. But gentlemen, I just can't thank you enough for joining us and sharing some of the wisdom that you have from your experiences here on Talk About It Tuesdays, presented by Hospital Special Surgery. We love it. We love where you are. We love what you've achieved. We're really proud of you. And we're looking forward to you guys playing it forward, not just through the people that you bring up and interns and the people that work with you, but also think of ways that we could give back to the next generation of the CUNY students, because we know that it's done differently here. And when it's done differently, I mean, it serves a population that normally is not getting those opportunities. And we think that we need more of that. So you guys leading the way and always thinking about us means tons to our students. And we can't thank you and appreciate you more.
Hey, we appreciate it, Zach. We're here to help.
If there's any way, yeah, please reach out, anybody who's watching, and there's ways we can help, that would be great. And Zach, we need to do one of these with a reunion of the Goodwill tours. That would be a great talk about it, I think. Coming up.
We have lined up for the spring because we have no spring sports, sadly. And we'll have, at the very least, we could do some educational webinars. And that's what we're going to continue to do. Gentlemen, I would like to put a plug, everybody, the NESCAC's coming back this spring. So if you want to be fans of something, come watch the NESCAC games online. Thanks for having us.
All right. Appreciate you guys.
Great to see you all. Thank you, gentlemen.
Right.
Appreciate it. Again, Talk About It Tuesdays from the CUNY Athletic Conference. Thank you for joining us all, and have a fabulous day. And if you need any input and contacts with these fine gentlemen, we're more than willing to help. We're here ready to help you out. So please reach out to the conference office. All the best.